We might be too young to have a spotted cow, but we are both diehard Packers fans.
I could talk about this for hours.
He was my legend. He was my quarterback one. Taysom Hill, forever in my heart.
We have a kind of a reputation of being the young and diehard fans. How is that, Dr. Pepper Taysom?
Amazing.
Okay, good. Let's keep it under 25 minutes, all right?
Welcome back to the Underage Packers podcast. This is episode 71. This is Joey. I, as I'm always, joined by my great co-host wearing his Cheesehead TV merch and the new training camp hat, Big B. How are you feeling today?
Feeling pretty good. Excited for training camp.
I have to ask you, like I asked our friend Aaron Nagler the other day, on a scale to from 1 to Yash Nyman, how excited are you for camp?
Man, I'll say a 9 right now. I guess
a very unvariable scale. I don't know what the highest answer is on that scale, but it exists. So joining us today for a very special episode of the Underage Packers podcast as we preview training camp, we are officially cutting down the ribbon for season 2 of the Underage Packers podcast. He was nice enough to come back again. It's a miracle. Please welcome to the show, Wes Hodkiewicz. How are you today, Wes?
I'm good, buddy. The miracle part is a little heavy, though. You thought that it was going to be that hard of a stretch to get me back on here?
Yeah, I can't believe after the first time you wanted to use your time on this.
No, I was happy to be back. To be honest with you, it seems like, quite honestly, it feels like yesterday we were talking. I mean, this offseason, it always goes by fast. But if you'd tell me we're already 6 months removed from the NFC Championship game and just how quickly time has passed here, it's remarkable. But here we are, right back in 2021, the season's staring right in our faces.
Yep, there's been plenty of things to keep Packers fans on their toes this offseason. With some big news today, Rodgers has signed his contract with the Packers. Amari Rodgers finally getting his rookie deal done. Big B, there's not too much to be said. Pretty standard third-round rookie. But Amari Rodgers, are you going to be looking anything special with him at training camp, specifically with special teams with Amari Rodgers this offseason?
Well, I'm very excited to see what he does in the special teams, and I'm also excited to see how many roles, I guess you would say, he has in the offense. Mm-hmm. Definitely that wildcat piece, I guess you would say. I think I used that right. Not sure.
Yeah, kind of a Tyler Ervin guy that Matt LaFleur has used quite often, has found some guys to, after Tyler Ervin got injured, Aaron Jones early in the season, and the offense was a lot more efficient with Tyler Ervin in the offense last year. So hopefully Amari Rodgers can be even more of an upgrade from that. Branching off to some other players, Wes, is there anyone specifically you're looking forward to seeing at this training camp?
Man, there's so many, dude. That's the cool thing about the direction this offense and defense have gone is there's so many young guys that are ascending. So, I mean, just to throw out a couple names, I mean, seeing what Rashawn Gary did last year with a little uptick in snaps, I think this year you're going to see his workload go up even higher. And I think there's going to be packages that Joe Barry is going to be able to come up with to get him and the Smith brothers on the field together. I think they're really going to be able to capitalize on Za'Darius's versatility because, quite honestly, man, you guys saw it too last year. I just think the way that Gary was playing, especially down the stretch of the season, whether it was not just the pass rushing, but just the way he defended the run, how game he was with, his conditioning, and he was ready for as big of a role as the Packers could give him. So I think you're going to see that go another step. But really, it's going to come down to those skill position players on offense. I just think the Packers have a litany of them, probably more than I ever recall during my time on the beat. I'm not saying that, they're as deep as they were in 2011 with receivers and tight ends, but when you look at the fact that you bring in Amari Rodgers and you get Devin Funchess back and you have all these different types of body types at the receiver position. Oh, and then by the way, you have a 4-time Pro Bowler, now arguably the best receiver in the game, Devontae Adams leading that position group, in addition to Aaron Jones returning, Robert Tonyan breaking out the way he did last year, Mercedes Lewis. They just have so many weapons that they can utilize, and you would hope that it'll be Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. But regardless of how that situation unfolds, it is a embarrassment of riches right now for whoever does, go line up under center for Green Bay.
Yeah, you talk about those endless offensive weapons. I'm really looking forward to seeing Josiah DeGuara. Yeah, he got injured week 4 of last year and early in the season. Once again, like Tyler Irvin, he had quite a bit of involvement with Matt LaFleur's offense, especially for a rookie. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he has progressed in his injury rehab, and then hopefully getting involved once again. You mentioned Joe Barry, Wes. What are some players you talked about? Zadarius Smith maybe lining up at some other spots of the defensive line. But what are some more players specifically that you think might most benefit from this new scheme?
Well, I can't wait to see what he does with the cornerbacks. Jair Alexander is 24 years old. He's at the peak of his powers. I still think he has his best football still ahead of him. I think there's a lot of room for him to still grow. But I think you look at what the Rams did last year with Jalen Ramsey and the multitude of ways that Jair could be used, whether it's just as a strict, shutdown cornerback where he's just following the best guy in the field at all times, which is something that Mike Pettin didn't like to do quite a bit. At least they didn't do that very often the last 2 seasons. So whether it's that and traveling Alexander more, or just seeing how these young cornerbacks adjust and adapt to what Barry wants to do. I actually wrote our position by position story that I'll be posting on Monday. And there's 4 guys now that were top 50 picks at the cornerback position for Green Bay, 5 if you want to include Darnell Savage in that at safety. So they've put a ton of resources into that position here the last 3 seasons, and seeing some of the fruits of that labor. They were 7th in passing last year. Certainly the takeaways were up, the passes defense were up. If you get the pass rush going the way they want, they get the bounce back season they're looking for from Preston Smith, I really feel like the Packers have a really nice balance there in terms of the pressure that they can generate and the opportunities that could present themselves on the back end.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of groups that benefit off of each other. The pass rush obviously benefiting the secondary, just getting to the quarterback quicker. And one player that I'm really excited for in Joe Barry's defense specifically, Darnell Savage. The Rams last year going off of Brandon Staley, branching off of Vic Fangio. They used a lot moving their safeties, John Johnson, a plethora of other guys, moving them up to the defensive line, moving them all over the field. And Mike Pettin was willing to use Darnell Savage versatility. So I'm really excited to see what he can offer in Joe Barry's defense. Let's get to some of the camp battles that we will be definitely watching here at training camp. I do have to announce me and Big B will be there at training camp August 9th through
there you go
that week. We will be charging $5 for signatures, $10 for pictures. So make sure you have
bring your 8x10s.
Yeah, somebody's got to pay the bills around here. So, some of the camp battles here, quarterback number 1, which will be really interesting, really hard to say right now. But Big B, regardless of what happens, if it's Jordan Love or if it's Aaron Rodgers, whoever shows up, how do you think these other guys that play out? The Packers have signed a multitude of guys, Kurt Benkert, the legendary, Blake Bortles, Jake Dolegala. Out of those 3 guys, do you think any of them make the roster?
I don't see more than 2 making the roster, but I definitely can see like Kurt Benkert making the practice squad definitely this year if he does have a great camp, which I think he does because he has the hair already. So I mean, he's already a lock for the practice squad. So yeah, I only see 2 making the official 53-man roster.
Yeah, if we're in Green Bay and we don't see Kurt Benkert riding on a skateboard at least once, I want a refund from somebody. Big B, now you got another camp battle here. Let's hear it. Don't bring up Jamal Williams too much. Don't get too reminiscent.
I'll try to simmer down a bit. But Packers did lose Jamal Williams, and they did draft A.J. Dillon. So now we have a running back number 3 spot wide open. Some guys are Kylan Hill, who we just drafted, Dexter Williams, who is pretty much off the roster right now because I think we all know, and Patrick Taylor, the undrafted free agent last year, who didn't see much. Well, he didn't see any playing time last year, and he got hurt. I think I don't even know when he got hurt. Don't remember, but it'll definitely be very interesting to see who gets that running back number 3 spot.
Yeah, Wes, you've watched more training camps than us. So what do you think it really comes down to with these guys? So, how much does the other skills that they can possess factor into this, like their pass protection, special teams, and whatnot?
Yeah, special teams is going to be huge for that number 3 running back role, and who emerges there. Certainly look at even A.J. Dillon last year. He did his own amount of special teams work, and certainly Jamal Williams, as Big B is well familiar with, was basically almost a 4-core special teams player. I mean, he's going to go down as one of the most consistent and prudent, players that I covered at that position, considering what he offered offensively. Didn't fumble in 4 years, but also could return if they needed him to. He could block in the posse back on kickoff returns, and, could even be a personnel protector on punts. So he offered them a lot of versatility that they're going to miss there. So AJ Dillon has to pick up some of that slack, but the guy I'm really excited to see, though, is Patrick Taylor. And you guys here, when you get there August 9th, you're going to see him. Patrick Taylor looks to me like a more filled out version of James Starks. He's about 6'2". He is a man among boys out there. I mean, you can see why the Packers really like this guy coming out of Memphis. Unfortunately for him, it was that weird Lisfranc type foot injury he had. It wiped him out for pretty much all of his last season in Memphis, and then kept him out of practice through almost December. So now he's healthy. He was out there during the offseason program, and it's a 3-horse race there right now with them putting Mike Weber. So seeing which guy emerges there is going to be really interesting to watch. And be honest with you, as much attention has been thrown on, the quarterback situation with Rodgers and Love and everything around that orbit, the Packers went in the span of 28 days and acquired 3 really interesting quarterbacks, whether it's Blake Bortles trying to get his career back on track, whether it's Kurt Benkert, who's actually was with Matt Schaub. He was in that offense with Matt Ryan. That's 2 players that Matt LaFleur is very familiar with from his time in Atlanta, trusts what the development was there, certainly has a very affable personality that we've seen a lot of. And Jake Delagala, guys, 6'7", 247 pounds.
Ow.
If he would ever find his way onto the Packers roster, he would be tied for the tallest quarterback in team history. So it isn't your typical undrafted rookie that they signed, a Tim Boyle, a Taysom Hill, a Joe Callahan, but there's 3 guys there that are entrenched in a really interesting battle for what will either be the number 2 or number 3 quarterback position.
Did Cliff Crystal give you that tidbit on the tallest quarterback?
I looked that up myself, believe it or not.
Wow.
I actually did the research. I was like, there's a 6'7", 242-pound quarterback in camp. I got to see where this guy actually ranks in the team annals. But he's a tall drink of water. And, my first impressions, I only got to see him for a couple days, but, seems to have a live arm. I really was impressed with Benkert. And it's not just the hair. It's not just the flash. It's not the video games. The guy has a live arm. And you can see why Atlanta invested as much time as they did into him the last 3 years, and why Green Bay was quick to pick him up and take a look, when he did come available here after the draft.
Yeah, I'm hoping the best for Benkert. And yeah, it is really an interesting mix and group of backup quarterbacks at that position. As far as running back goes, I do think Kylan Hill has the best chance. But Patrick Taylor, I really like Mike Weber, maybe only because he was very good in Madden franchise. But fortunately, he's no longer on the roster. Moving on to the wide receivers here. Another interesting group of guys behind the 3 obvious ones, really Devontae Adams, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, now Lazard. You have Devin Funches, Equinemius St. Brown, Malik Taylor, and Juwan Winfrey. Now, Wes, we've heard quite a bit about the past 2 off seasons about Juwan really shining in minicamp whenever he got the opportunity. What have you seen from Winfrey so far?
Had a nice camp. Made a couple of the biggest plays of the entire offseason program, at least during the portions of practice that were open to the media. With the decision that the receivers made, the veteran receivers made, where they weren't at OTAs, whatever all that played into it, Winfrey was a guy who maximized his snaps with the first team offense. And certainly at the end of minicamp there, had that nice 50-yard catch from Jordan Love in what was, Love's best practice, in my opinion. And again, in one that was available to the media. So I was really impressed with him. Has some versatility there, could play inside, can run the boundary a little bit. But the thing that I like the most about this receiver group is it's kind of an a la carte sort of situation right now for the Packers. Certainly Devontae Adams is going to be on the field 97% of your plays offensively. So there's 4 other skill position players you got to get on the field. Green Bay, for a number of years there, basically kept the same prototype for the type of receiver they were looking for. 6'4", 200 pounds, fast. They mixed it up a little bit now. Now, Funchess certainly is a guy, again, that fans will see is very physically imposing, has a good track record there. Obviously, has been a good locker room guy throughout the course of his career. I enjoyed talking to him in the one Zoom we had with him. Seems to have a really interesting personality. But the wild card is Amari Rogers, because I think the table is set for him to be able to make that year one impact like Randall Cobb made in 2011. There's going to be packages for him. They need that jet motion aspect of that offense. The offense was not the same when they couldn't do it. And obviously you want to be able to have Aaron Jones in the backfield as often as possible. So I think Rodgers is really the linchpin, and then seeing how they move the rest of those pieces. Alan Lazard's back. Marcus Valdez-Scantling had a nice season last year. A lot of guys that are going to be competing for a handful of positions and roles in this offense. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, a couple jobs as well.
Yeah, Big B, what do you think of the guys like EQ specifically who, and there's a plethora of different guys, not specifically just at wide receiver, but this training camp is going to be really big for them. EQ coming up on his 4th year of his contract. He still has a lot to prove. Josh Jackson. What are you looking at for some of those guys? Maybe list a few more that you think really have to prove a lot this upcoming camp.
Well, another guy is Oren Burks, who, man, I don't even know what's happening with him at this point. I feel like he's always injured. He's a guy I definitely want to see step up a bit this off season. And man, I really hope EQ gets it together. Wasn't he hurt last year? I don't remember.
Yeah, he had a season injury, kept him out all of 2019, I believe.
And he kind of dealt with the knee last year then too, with a couple games sidelining him. So yeah, that's been one of the big things.
Yeah, so hopefully he can stay injured. I definitely
stay healthy.
Play a lot.
He said, "I hope he can stay injured."
Oh yeah.
I guess we just missed a chance for EQ to ever come on the show.
Sorry, EQ, I love you.
But yeah, there's a lot of other guys, specifically one Big B at the tight end 3 position. What do you think of some of those guys? Jace Sternberger, who has a 2-game suspension. I think this year is going to be really big for him. How do you think that's all going to play out between him, Dominique Daphne, and then Josiah DeGuara, who plays kind of a different role?
Yeah, well, Daphne and DeGuara has kind of a different role in the offense than Jay Sternberger. But with his 2-game suspension, of course, that leaves like pretty much a free roster spot on the roster. And I'm excited to see what Daphne does this offseason, because he was not with the team last year, right, Wes?
That's correct.
Yep. Signed him later in the year, and I'm just excited to see. I'm a big Dom Daphne fans, so let's go.
Went from where was he? Indiana, bouncing at a club, and now here he is on the Packers. Cornerback, moving over to the defensive side of things, cornerback 2 is going to be a really fun one to watch. Kevin King coming off not the best game against Tampa Bay. A lot of fans are certainly not in his favor at this point. The Packers getting Eric Stokes at pick 29 in the first round of this year. What did you see from Stokes? Obviously, it's going to take some time for him to adapt. But do you think he can possibly take over that cornerback 2 opposite of Jair Alexander pretty early on in the season, Wes?
Well, and if you follow what the Packers have done, going back to Ted Thompson, and it's a principle that Brian Gutekunst has also kind of stayed in the business of, which is never leaving yourself really short at any position. So if you bring back a veteran and you draft a player, you hope that that young player will push the veteran. You saw it with Devon House when he came back, and they also picked up Jair Alexander, Tremont Williams came back. Those type of moves are things they've liked to do, because it gives you an established veteran that knows the defense, that's comfortable with the people around them, but it also gives you a long-term piece. And it's worked out really well for Green Bay over the years at a number of different positions. The one thing, because that's probably one of the most popular questions we've gotten in inbox this offseason, is, do you think Eric Stokes will start week 1? Well, historically, if you go back over the last 10 years, the odds are not in his favor there. Casey Hayward did not start week 1. Jared Bush did back in 2012. I had Demarius Randall kind of broke that trend a little bit and played quite a bit his rookie year, but that was almost a little bit out of need. And then even, Jair Alexander was playing in basically the nickel and dime when he got drafted in 2018. Now, the nice thing is, I think as Stokes develops, there's enough opportunity with how often you see sub packages out there for him to be able to get on the field. What the Packers have to figure out this training camp is, okay, what is Jair Alexander's primary responsibilities? Where do we want him playing? This is the ace in our hole. Where does he need to fit into our deck of cards, right? So once you figure that out, then you start figuring out the personnel, because I look at that as just a wide open competition throughout the secondary right now until we see differently. Now, right now it's going to be Shandon Sullivan in the nickel, or you're going to have Kevin King outside. You might end up seeing Will Redmond as that dime guy, but where does Josh Jackson and Eric Stokes and John Charles, where do they fit in? Where could they potentially push for playing time? That's what I want to see. I think it's going to be a proving ground for them in the training camp and being able to show what they can do and to push for a roster spot. Because at the end of the day, you need 6 defensive backs. That's just the way this game is played nowadays. And with injuries and everything of that nature, you want to be able to be versatile with how you move your parts. And much like the offensive line, I think the secondary, specifically that cornerback room, there's a lot of different directions they can go, with that first domino, of course, being where Jair Alexander's lining up.
Sure. And with Stokes, before we get to our last camp battle here at Big B, which is probably the most exciting of them all, is there a specific rookie you're going to have your eyes on this training camp, Big B?
Well, on defensive side, anyways, it's Shamar Jean-Charles. I really am curious to see where he would fit in if he's going to get to play this year, which I really hope he does. Mm-hmm. But I really liked him when we drafted him for some reason. I don't know why. So that's my boy, I guess. Pretty much trying to say here.
I'm really looking forward to seeing Daryl Slayton. Not even see how he plays, just to see a man of that size in real life is going to be remarkable.
He is a skyscraper. Like there's a few people because people always ask that question, like who are the guys that like kind of like wowed you when you saw them in person? And it's usually like a 3-person race. It's Julius Peppers is just one of the most incredible human beings and specimens I've ever witnessed. And Martellus Bennett, just for his height and his size. Mercedes Lewis fits into that too. I've seen a lot of defensive linemen over the years, and they come in all shapes and sizes. But TJ Slayton, man, like if they can get, he's a raw prospect, but if they can get him playing at a high level, get his weight where it needs to be, where they want it to be, this guy has all the potential in the world. I mean, his athleticism is off the charts for a guy that's 6'5", 330 pounds or whatever he is. It's remarkable what he's able to do, whether it's basketball or just on the field. And the other thing to keep in mind too, when you watch him in training camp, he had a 10-yard dash speed, which is just crazy for a guy his size. He has very good quick twitch. He has that explosiveness. And when you're looking at guys on day 3, you're looking for guys that have a trait. And that's definitely the trait for TJ Slayton.
Well, hopefully he can really free up a lot of stuff for Kenny Clark, give Kenny some rest, hopefully free Kenny from some injuries and just make everything easier for Kenny Clark. 2 big guys on the defensive line. Big B, how about you tell us about the most exciting camp battle of the century?
All right. I don't even know how to introduce this one, so I'm just going to have Wes just talk about it. The long snapper battle.
We need to hear about
this. Was the build up for the long. You know that my favorite thing about the long snapper battle, and I haven't been a part of many of them, but okay, especially during the offseason program when there's not doing a whole lot of like drills for the special teams, the specialists. So what you ultimately get is you get 2 guys. I almost said Rick Lovato there, but in Joe Fortunato and Hunter Bradley, the 2 guys competing with each other for basically one job, just snapping to each other during practice. That's like what they do. It's like you just go and snap with the other snapper. I'll say this. Now the NFL mandated that you're going to have a bunch of cuts here coming up. I don't like it, but it's the direction they went. Now you have a cut to 85 after the first preseason game. You have another cut after the second preseason game to 80. Packers have 6 specialists right now. So I'm curious how long they stick with 6. But for as long as they're there, I've never seen anything like this where the Packers have had 6 guys on their 90-man roster of all be specialists. So Spoff wrote the our position by position preview for that. I think if you would have asked me 3 months ago, I thought the odds were probably long that you would see all three of the guys that are competing for a role still be here, because usually a guy falls off because you need to add somebody. Packers are really dedicated to this, though, whether it's taking some snaps off of Mason Crosby's leg or, having Ryan Winslow and Fortunato compete with, J.K. Scott and Hunter Bradley. You never really know what to make of long snapping competitions. There's not a big stat you can point to, but certainly that's going to be one thing that we're going to have to track. So it'll be an interesting experience.
I could see your face as we were building up to it. You're like, am I missing something?
I was like, okay, so inside linebacker we're going to talk about here, or, maybe go back to the receivers again for a second, or offensive line. No, let's bring up the long snapper.
It's the long snappers.
It's good stuff.
That's going to be so intriguing this year.
You know what it was? This is what it was, Joey. It was when you're playing. It's like you guys know who Zach Greinke is. You young enough, old enough? You know who Zach Greinke is? Either one of you? Zach Greinke.
So.
He's a pitcher. Played for the Brewers. He was a part of the NLCS team. Okay, good.
Oh, I don't watch baseball.
Zach Greinke has an interesting little quirk. He's an excellent Cy Young winning pitcher, but every once in a while he'll tune down the fastball and he'll throw like a 50-mile-an-hour like lob pitch. That's what that was. That was the 50-mile-an-hour lob pitch going with the long snapper. I like it.
All the build up for that. We are talking to Wes Hodkiewicz of Packers.com. That's the first time I have remembered to do our halfway remember who it is. So very proud of myself. At minicamp this year, speaking of the offensive line, David Bakhtiari, he had a season-ending injury just before this season ended. How do you think, I guess, what did you see? Could you see much from his rehab, his recovery process that would indicate to you when he might make a return?
Well, I'll tell you this, and this goes back to DeGuara too. We walked in for the first OTA practice of the spring. You're never really sure what to think, especially guys coming off injuries like Dave was New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, whatever it was, that he tore the ACL. And I think he said it was January 4th that he had the surgery. I wasn't expecting to see David Bakhtiari that first day of practice. And what happens is we're all standing by the doors, got to get the, same shot we always get of everybody coming out so we can put our social accounts and get likes and tweets and whatever have you. Not really providing much of a service other than, hey, it's players. But we get done, and then out comes, as I tweeted, the stallion that comes zipping through the doors at the very end, and it was David Bakhtiari. And I'm not saying he was sprinting or anything like that, but he's running at a pretty good clip, and he goes down to his area of the field, and he's working with Nate Weir, one of the trainers. And I guess I should have expected that. I've seen some of the videos of him. I know what kind of work ethic he has and how diligent he has, and he also has a lot of great resources too. Whether it is this training staff, whether it is Brian Balaga, who's had 2 ACL injuries. There's a lot of people that he turned to. So it shouldn't be that big of a surprise that he was out there doing what he was doing. Same thing with Josiah DeGuara going out and wearing a helmet the first day he goes out there. Now, he wasn't practicing. But just to be able to see those guys make it back, these used to be injuries, Joey, where, a guy tears his ACL, you're wondering, okay, am I going to see him again in 8 months, 9 months, and here they are now 5-6 months out there doing what they're doing. So I don't know when Bakhtiari is going to be back. I'm guessing it'll probably be a situation where he feels like he's ready to go, and the Packers are going to have to just wait to make sure that they, he's a future Hall of Famer right now. I mean, he's the best left tackle in the game. And when you see how he plays that position and the ease with which he does it, you gain a better appreciation for what this guy brings to this football team and what he brings to the National Football League. So we'll see exactly where it shuffles out. The nice thing for Green Bay, you have Elton Jenkins there. I thought he played his butt off last year at left tackle, a position that he really hadn't repped that much, showed his versatility to the max. And as long as you have a player like that available to you, you want to get Bakhtiari back, the sooner the better. But the Packers have enough, kind of like life preservers here to be able to get through however many weeks they need to before Bakhtiari's back.
Speaking of that, Big B, who do you think specifically starts at left tackle if Bakhtiari is not available? And then, if it's Elton Jenkins, or are they sliding over to left guard? How do you think that whole O-line arrangement looks for the time being without David?
Well, I think it's definitely going to be Elton Jenkins at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think John Runyon will be the left guard, and Ben Braden might make a push for that. You never know.
Yep.
Then, of course, Myers, Patrick, and Turner will start on the right side. So that's how I see that playing out.
Okay, yeah, I definitely do see. I love Billy Turner and his versatility, and like Wes mentioned, they have plenty of guys that have shown they can play a lot of positions along the line. That's enough boring football talk, though. Before we sign off, I have something very exciting planned that I thought of this morning. It's not even in our script. Wes, are you still a believer? Because I noticed it's not in your bio anymore that Cecil Isbell belongs in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Hey, I always switch this up, right? Because, you got to keep it fresh on the bio. I don't like having it where it gets stale and it's like, hey, I'm a Green Bay Press Gazette reporter, even though I haven't worked there for 5 years. So I got to keep this thing moving. I love that you asked that question, though. Right to get me in the heart there, Joey. So here's a couple things.
Save your speech here because we're going to play a game. So, Big B, you're going to present Jamal Williams for the Hall of Fame. You guys are going to pretend like you're Pete Doherty making his presentation for Leroy Butler every year. I'm going to be the great decider to decide who goes into the Hall of Fame. So, Wes, it looks like you're ready to give your impassioned delivery, so let's hear it.
So just for the record, as I get my thoughts together, this will be, I'm sure, the first time in recorded history where you're going to have a game where one of the participants is putting down an argument for Cecil Isbell to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and the other one is putting down an argument for Jamal Williams. I just want to make sure I have that clear.
I think you can put it in the record books.
Okay, all right. I feel pretty confident saying we're the first ones that are doing that. Here's my argument about Cecil Isbell, and it's very important for me as a side note to make this argument because I think when they made the Centennial class, the whole objective of that was to honor players from the pre-Hall of Fame era. They did that to some extent. Bobby Dillon obviously got enshrinement, but they also used it as sort of shoehorning in some other people that probably should have been already in from the more recent eras. Cecil Isbell was a big oversight in terms of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and they'll tell you why. As good as, Arnie Herber was and a lot of these guys, Isbell was the one that sort of picked up that mantle. And the only reason that he's not a household name with Packer fans is because after 1942, in an age where guys weren't making a lot of money playing football, he basically stepped away. And I've heard some of the stuff I've read, either was from Cliff or some other sources, was a factor with his family, with his wife. And he ended up becoming a football coach instead. That didn't actually go the greatest for him. But as the quarterback started to blossom in that era, the guy threw 24 touchdown passes in 1942. To give you a comparison to that, it took 40 years, guys. How old are you guys now? 13, 12? What do we got?
16 and 15, I believe.
16 and 15. There's 31 years between you. You'd have to go find another 9-year-old down on Velp Avenue to be able to have enough years lived here to properly represent how many years it took for Lynn Dickey to break the single season touchdown pass record that Cecil Isbell had. If he would have played 4 more seasons, if he'd won another championship, I think Cecil Isbell would be a guy that would have been in the conversation who has his number retired. He would have been a guy that people would be talking about to this day. He only really played 5 seasons though. That's why he doesn't get that proper respect. In my lifetime, I don't know if it'll happen in Cliff's or not, but in my lifetime, I really hope that we right that wrong, because I think if you talk to Cliff, if you talk to people that know this team, the real true historians of it, they will tell you that Cecil Isbell was a football player in this team's illustrious history, along with Vern Llewellyn, that doesn't get the proper amount of respect he does because of the era in which he played. Wow.
Very great points made. Learned a lot more than Legacy taught me. But Big B, let's hear the argument now for running back Jamal Williams.
All right. So, started out, the man hasn't fumbled in 4 years in his entire NFL career. That should already put him in the Hall of Fame. But, he has the dance moves. He can go up on that stage, jiggle a little bit, if you know what I mean. That's already more entertainment than the entire Hall of Fame speech in the past 10 years combined. All right. The man has tons of versatility, playing everywhere. He could probably play defense if he wanted to. That's my argument. Thank you.
That's it. We're done.
I don't know. If I had like 10 more minutes, I could probably think of something better. But
Oh man, I love it, dude. That's awesome. He's got
This-
the dance moves.
I'm sure that's exactly very similar to what Pete Doherty says about
I
Leroy
can see
Butler.
it
I
coming
mean,
out of Pete's mouth. I can see those exact words coming out of Pete's mouth as he stands in front of those 49 other people laying down the argument.
I'm sure he's he's so well respected for his stance arguments. All right, so that's Big B's argument. I think who is going to get the golden jacket. It's pretty difficult here. I think I have to go with Wes. Cecil Isabel is finally going into the Underage Packers Hall of Fame.
we'll get him next time. Don't worry. We'll get him next
Hey,
time.
there's always next year. Just ask Leroy Butler, right? So
Exactly.
there's always next year. It was a convincing argument, Big B. It's just sometimes the stats they're just a little too heavy, you know.
This is Big B is going to probably argue this is almost as much of an atrocity as John Lynch getting into the Hall of Fame before Butler, but Cecil Isabel, the first member of the Underage Packers Hall of Fame, and I'll stand with the argument for the Pro Football Hall of Fame now. All right, let's wrap it up here, Big B, with 2 questions about roster construction, and then we'll end it off.
All right. So there's always the handful of under the radar guys to make the roster. So who's a few players that are under the radar that can make the roster this year?
It's a good question. Obviously, there's always one. Last year was Chris Barnes, who I think came out of just absolutely nowhere. I will say, though, he was the player that I wrote my feature on at the end of rookie minicamp or whatever. I always end up doing a story on an undrafted guy. If you look at it, it's a pretty good track record, if I do say so myself. But I don't think a lot of people saw him being the key communicator for this defense. This year, there's a number of them. I think it actually starts with what I said before with Patrick Taylor. I'm very interested to watch him work. I think the preseason is going to be huge for all 3 of those young backs, Kylan Hill, and also Dexter Williams, who came back a lot leaner. It looks like he put a lot of work in this offseason. And that guy that falls in that number 3 role, that's going to be a position that plays. So it's very important. And, you look at the way this defense is constructed, I think there's always going to be an opportunity for like a Christian Uphoff, a guy that was a 6'3" playmaker at Illinois State. He returned kickoffs for them. He's a guy I've had my eye on. I think you got Kabion Ento coming back now. He was injured for most of last year. He's been with the team for 2 years here, but I think he's a guy that gives them a lot of opportunity as well. And then ultimately, it's going to end up coming down to some of these guys holding serve, the Dominic Daphnes of the world, showing that, yeah, I latched onto the roster last year, but I'm going to stay here. This is my position now. I'm going to find my way back onto this 53-man roster. It's always exciting to see those because sometimes the guys that you least expect are the ones that end up making the biggest impact. So I think the way, they didn't sign a multitude of undrafted rookies like they have in previous years. I think a lot of that had to do with the number of guys that went back to college because of the whole pandemic. But certainly those are a couple of names that sort of come off the top of my head and guys that could potentially factor into this thing. I will say this too. I mentioned all those, the Smith Bros and Rashawn Gary. In order to be as versatile as they want with those guys, they're going to need a 4th guy to emerge there too. They do have a multitude of guys coming back at that position with experience from last year. John Garvin being one of them, the 7th-round pick from last year. Randy Ramsey was a guy that really was a big special teams contributor, could potentially be that number 4 guy. So I think you're going to end up, at the end of the day, I bet you end up seeing, another 3-4 of these undrafted free agents, whether it be last year's class or guys coming in this year that'll make a run at a roster spot and maybe surprise a few people.
I don't know if he'll make the roster, but I'm really excited to see maybe get a shot on the practice squad. Bailey Gaither, might not be pronouncing that right. He had a big play on Kevin Keene sometime this camp. Very fast guy from San Diego State, home of James Jones. How fast was he in camp, Wes?
Yeah, he was really fast. San Jose State, just to make sure we get that. But I know what you're saying. Yes, extremely fast. A little bit of a slender build, which is sometimes what you expect from guys coming from that level. The thing about Gaither is he was a 6-year guy at San Jose State. He had a medical red shirt in addition to his regular red shirt. And he played all the way through it. So he's a little bit older than your typical undrafted rookie. But again, like I mentioned earlier with Winfrey, there's these guys that got snaps during the OTAs that you typically wouldn't have seen because of the 5-6 veteran guys that would have been back at receiver. Made the most of them And again, I think from 1 to 10, seeing how the Packers mix and match that personnel throughout camp and into the preseason is going to be really fun to watch. And certainly Gaither really definitely fits into that as well.
Yeah, he'll definitely have his work cut out for him to make the practice squad with all those wide receivers we mentioned earlier. But I'd really love to see him get a chance. Big B, any random undrafted guys that will probably make it onto our Name That Packer show in 10 years?
Well, one guy that just randomly just popped in my head is Willington Prevalon.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was an outside linebacker and they moved him to D line, right?
D line, but yeah, no, he's a little bit. He's like 287. He's not your typical like 320-pound dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not 287, not that big.
Yeah, exactly. Coming from the 169-pound staff writer here.
Yeah, so that's just one guy that I'm curious to see how he does this year.
All right, yeah, it'll definitely be interesting. A big group of guys, not as much this year in the undrafted free agent class, but we'll end it off. We'll just go round table here with our breakout player for this year. Last year, a lot of them, Robert Tunyon, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. This year, I think MVS is going to have another great year, but I'm going with Rashawn Gary, and I think he's going to establish himself as a lead pass rusher like Z. Wes, who is your guy for this year?
Yeah, it has to be AJ Dillon. And I know a lot of fans have been asking about, okay, how many snaps is he going to play? I'm sure they all are thinking about their fantasy football team, but how many snaps is he going to play? What is his role going to be? The last 3 years, Jamal Williams averaged 115 carries per season. He had a lot of catches mixed in there as well. His snap totals, they need to be able to replicate that. They need to be able to have a guy step up into that role. And with so many young guys at running back, it makes sense that it's Dillon. I just feel like he's going to be the perfect complement to the way that Aaron Jones runs. The Packers, if you follow the way they did it last year, they liked using Jones early and they liked using him late. I think Dillon's the type of guy that can wear a team down before halftime and get them going again after the break. So he's the guy I have my eye on. And again, we'll see how everything shuffles out with quarterback. There's so many questions that have to get answered there, but whether it is Rodgers or whether it is Jordan Love, those two running backs are going to make their life so much easier as far as the signal caller is concerned. I think, when you look at the way that this offense is constructed, the Mike Shanahan, sort of West Coast style that Kyle's used and Sean McVay and obviously now Matt LaFleur, it is predicated on the run. And there has been a renaissance with the ground game in Green Bay here the last 2 years. And I think A.J. Dillon's going to be able to keep carrying that torch.
Yeah, it will be really interesting because last year Jamal Williams-Ligo was in front of him, but now he's got a year in the system, and I hope we can see more of what he flashed week 16 against Tennessee.
Let me throw this out there too. That year spent with Jamal Williams is important because more so than any other guy that the Packers have drafted in the backfield, Jamal Williams is pretty ready-made to play at this level. It just so happened that he happened to be in the same draft class as Aaron Jones. But I've said for a long time, and this isn't just to appease Big B over there, but Jamal Williams could have been an every down back for Green Bay if that's the way the situation would have unfolded. This is a guy that could pass block from day one. He could catch the ball out of the backfield. And as we've talked about numerous times now, never put the ball on the grass. So those are big lessons that AJ Dillon learned last year behind him and Aaron Jones. I think that's really going to benefit him. And for a guy that carried the ball as much as he did at Boston College, I don't think it necessarily was a terrible thing that he only touched it 89 times or whatever it was last year. Allow him to get in this season. He's comfortable in the offense. Certainly with all the COVID stuff last year kind of interrupting things and the way he finished the year against the Titans, I think the arrow is definitely pointing up there.
Yeah, late great Ted Thompson, one of his last late round gifts to us was the duo of Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones. Big B, who are your big breakout players for this upcoming season?
I'm going to go with Chris Barnes. He had a hell of a rookie year, definitely, and he didn't even make the roster to even start it out. So just coming in and playing like a monster in his rookie year, I can just see him getting so much better this year.
Yeah, he's finally solidified on the team. I mean, yeah, he was on the practice squad, and then they used their one-game elevation on him for week 1, and the rest is history. That's all we got for you today, Wes. Big B, any final thoughts?
Just love all the Jamal Williams talk today. It just makes me so happy.
Wes, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It was fun. I'm excited for this season. Like I said before, I can't believe this is year 10 for me now already now on the Packers beat. So just seeing how the landscape has changed. We're talking on this medium now too, as opposed to back in 2012 when it was like, hey, we get to do chats like on the computer on like AOL. Like it's the evolution of Packers coverage. It's never ending, and I very much appreciate you guys bringing me on today.
No problem. We look forward to seeing you at camp. I think we'll give you a discount on our autograph charges.
I would really appreciate that. I'll bring my own Sharpie.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for watching. Make sure you follow Wes if you're not already. Subscribe to this YouTube channel and follow us on all the social medias. And we'll see you later. As always, go Pack Go.